welcome back to my channel. It has been a while since I have made a video. I have been wanting to make this exact video since I got back from my program, but I just never got around to it, so might as well do it now, right before the year ends. For a little background information, I did my Disney college program from spring of 2025 to the end of July. So I started January 13th. It was one of the best experiences I've ever had in my life. I loved my job, I loved the friends I made, I loved just being there, and I am ready to tell some stories from my time there working at Disney. Okay, so I am going to start with highlights. I had a note that I made for this video, but I cannot find it, so I'm just gonna say what comes to mind. It's gonna be out of order, fair warning. But the first thing I can remember that was like a big highlight of my program is I want to be a concept artist for Disney Imagineering, and I remember hearing about a little like Imagineering Day program that they do for college programmers, and I was like, ooh, I have to sign up when that happens on my program. So the day comes, they like release the applications, and I'm like so worried now because it's like they wanted to make sure that you are part of a career path that has to do with it, whereas right now I'm still getting my AA, so I'm not even like doing a bachelor's or anything yet. So I was worried that was gonna get me. I made a portfolio like for this application because they were like, oh, you can include one if you want. So I did that, worked really hard on it. I was like so scared I wasn't gonna get in, but I did. They said that 600 people applied for it and only 100 got picked, and I was one of them. So we woke up at like 6, got there early in the morning. It lasted about 6 hours till noon, and it was great. I can't really go into detail about what we did there because I'm pretty sure I remember them making us sign something to make sure we didn't talk about it, but it was great, and it just makes me more excited for my future career with Disney. Another highlight, I guess my role as a whole was a highlight because I got parking. I will say when I first saw that email when I got accepted and it told me like what my role was going to be, I saw parking and I was worried, let's just say that. But then I slowly got more and more excited, and by the time I got there, I love parking. If I go back, I want to do parking again, especially at Epcot. I made like my coworkers were great. The whole atmosphere out there was just so fun. There's so many things you get to do, from driving on the tram, spieling on the tram, parking cars, driving golf carts, setting up cones, taking cones down. There was a couple of shifts where we did marathon shifts, which, because they start in the Epcot parking lot, we all had to be there. And that is actually a highlight and a horror story, but I'll get to the horror part later. So yeah, I loved my role, and if you're watching this and maybe you're not at your college program yet, but you just found out your role and it's parking, at least for me, I loved it, and so I want to advise you to not be too worried. So for the next thing, this also relates to my role kind of, but I made some really good friends while I was down there. One was one of my roommates, well actually 2 of my roommates, but one actually moved out, but we stayed in touch afterwards, and we would just like do all this stuff together. We would go to Wawa sometimes. Actually, a lot of times we would just go to Wawa and chill. Even after she moved out, we would hang out. So I formed a really great relationship there, and then one of my coworkers at Epcot, we hit it off. The first time we hung out is we went to see the closing of Bug's Life, and after that we were like, this. So we had already been getting mistaken for each other. People would call me by her name because they thought I was her. From behind, we do look very similar. We have, like, both have pretty long hair, blonde-ish, and glasses, and just in general, we do look pretty similar. But, so I was like, who is this girl that people keep talking, like, calling me her name? And then we went to see Bug's Life, and then we just kept, like, doing stuff. We found out we had a lot in common, and now, like, we're very good friends. I still text her. She's still down there because she's a part-timer, but, yeah, so one thing that people say is that you'll find, like, really good friends on your program, and that definitely happened for me. I guess having to do with the Bug's Life thing, another thing, this wasn't exactly a highlight because it's sad, but I got to see, like, the closing days of some great attractions. So Bug's Life I got to see the closing day of, and then Muppet Vision I got to see the closing day of, which Muppet Vision, me and my sister, that was, like, one of our favorites. And so being there on the last day was very emotional. It was very cool to see, though, seeing so many people that did love the attraction, like me and my sister did. It was very, like, moving, I guess you could say. On top of seeing the closing of some attractions, I also got to be at some of the opening days of some attractions. So I got to watch the first showing ever of the Villains Unfairly Ever After show, because actually the girl I made really good friends with, her home location was Hollywood Studios, so Hollywood Studios cast members could sign up to watch the show first and then bring some friends, and I was one of the friends she brought. And so seeing that show, I will say, I've seen it a couple times afterwards now that it's fully open, and the vibes just aren't the same because the crowd, first of all, the whole auditorium was full. Second of all, everyone was super into it. We were cheering for all of the villains very loudly, and it was just like a great atmosphere. And so it's kind of ruined it for the rest of the times I've seen the show, because people really don't cheer as loud as they should be for some characters. But so I got to see that, and then I also got to see the new version of Test Track, which personally I think it is actually my favorite. Granted, I do not remember the first version, but I definitely like it better than the second version. And there was one night where it was open till 12. It was like a week before it opened to the public. It was open till 12 for any cast member getting off of work that night. So my shift ended at 10:30, and me and my other parking cast members that got off all went and rode it, and at some point the cast members let us stay on the ride, and we just, like, kept going around. We rode it maybe 7 times in a row, and we have pictures from each time we went around. That was a really great memory, and I really missed that part, like, doing stuff like that you would never be able to do without working there. There are a lot of other stories that I could tell, but I think I'm gonna get into the horror stories because I have a couple on my mind that I would like to tell. So I just talked about Test Track. One of my horror stories is that, so on the day of my preview for Test Track, I got in line, and, you know, they warn you, if something goes down, you won't get to ride it that day. That's just how it works. And it's for a testing phase, so it makes sense. But I get there on my time, then it shuts down. I think there was a malfunction, and then it started raining. And then it cleared up raining, and then there was a malfunction again. And then it rained again. I was in line for like 4 hours, I think. Maybe 5? I don't know. I'll put, like, the real time up here. Anyways, so I waited like 5 hours, and there was like a full line of all the people waiting. By the time they opened it for maybe like a split second, it was like me and maybe 20 other people in line that we just decided to stay. I didn't have work that day, and I was like, I want to ride this thing. And it was like one of the first days of the cast preview, so this, like, I would be like one of the first people to ride it. Anyways, so we finally get on, and it was like very, like, the feeling the rain on your face and the wind on your face. You're just like, I waited so long for this. It was very fun though. I liked that ride a lot. So that was definitely a little bit of a horror story because we just waited for hours and hours, and like at one point I had to use the restroom, so I had to like run out of the building in the rain and then run back, and they almost didn't let me back in, but then I was like, no, please, my stuff's up there. But yeah, anyways, that was a little bit of a horror story. Let's think. With the roommate situation. Okay, so I said 2 of my roommates I made friends with. There was one I did not make friends with. This is a warning to everyone going into a 2x2. So you can pick who you're like roommates with, which is what I did. So I was fine in that part of it. But you can't pick the other 2 people across the way. So one of my roommates, I don't want to say anything too specific. She was just, you can tell she's never had a roommate before, and most likely hasn't really had to do chores in her life, because I would find hair in like the microwave, find hair in the fridge, like there was food, like gross food everywhere. I would have to clean the kitchen like at least once every day, but usually twice a day, because I would clean it, and then she would like make her lunch, and then there's hair and food everywhere on the kitchen counter. There was like many times, well, she like, one of the first things she told us when she moved in, she was like, yeah, I get sick like all the time and I just don't know why. And the reason why is because she does not wash her hands, and I'm not gonna get into specifics, let's just say she was not a very hygienic person, and also she talked to herself 24/7. So say you're trying to sleep, but she just got home from work, you have to hear her like yelling to herself, like talking about whatever happened that day. So there was a couple times where we tried to, like, hey, can you do this, or can you do this for us, but it just didn't work out. So that's a fair warning. Even though that did happen and I had to live with that for my whole program, it really, like, when I look back on my program, I don't think super negatively about it. Like, obviously that scenario wasn't great, but like, it did not ruin my program for me in any way possible. So that's just a warning for roommates. You can end up with people who you might never think you might end up with. But what I was saying about the marathons earlier, how that is a horror story. So those were fun shifts. The thing is, you do have to wake up at midnight to get to your shift that starts at 1 or 2 a.m. And then you work till 7 a.m. and then you have it for 3 days in a row. So this is for parking attendants, obviously. And I had 2 marathons during my program. The second one, I heavily messed up because I decided, instead of trying to get like a couple hours of sleep and waking up at midnight, I just decided I'm going to stay up till midnight and then I'll just sleep after my shift. After 3 days of that, I had like a horrible migraine after my last shift, and then I was like so sleep deprived that I like fell asleep in like the parking lot, and then I went home, the parking lot of one of the hotels. I fell asleep in the parking lot there, and then I went back to my apartment complex, and then fell asleep in my car there, and then eventually made it up to my apartment and then fell asleep there. And it was just like, I don't recommend doing what I did, is all I'm gonna say. But overall, there really weren't a lot of like horror stories. I mean, some guests could be like rude. I didn't deal with any like horribly rude guests. Since we drove trams, there was a lot of rules for safety reasons, and some guests just don't understand that this is like a rule for safety and not a rule just to make your life harder. So like walking towards the tram while it's like moving full speed, we have to like yell at people over the microphone to like stay behind the line or stuff, and some people just like don't like listening. So the times when you have to do that, it's like you're like shaking and you're just like, oh, these people won't listen. But yeah, honestly, not many horror stories, I would say, but there was definitely a lot of highlights, and I really missed my program. I'm actually planning on going back next summer, and overall, I would recommend trying out the program for anyone who's curious or anyone who just wants to get away from the college life that they're going through right now. But yeah, thank you guys for watching. I think I'm going to end it here. I am planning on starting to make some more videos soon. Wish me luck. I get very distracted very easily, so hopefully I will stick to this though. Yeah, I will see you guys in the next video. Bye!